But here is something else that is just as important and something that I don't think many people are talking about. Being triggered by someone doesn't make it their fault, but triggering someone does not mean that you are free from accountability either.
Welcome to the Lyssn Podcast, your space to tune out the noise and tune in to the wisdom that already lives inside you. I'm Alyssa, and through soulful conversations and grounded reflections, we explore what it means to live your bliss, to walk through life aligned, intuitive, embodied, and lit up from within. Because the answers you're seeking, well, you already hold them. The real question is, do you have the courage to listen?
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Lyssn Podcast. My name is Alyssa, but you can just call me Liss. I just caught myself, oh my gosh, in the playback of my recording. Tell me you've had a baby without telling me that you've had a baby. That hair regrowth, though. Look at my little baby hairs. Oh gosh. Totally off topic. We're not going to be distracted by my hair anymore. Now, what if the reason that you're exhausted isn't because of what it is that you actually believe, but because of how much energy you spend defending it? In today's society, we live in a world full of sides, full of labels, full of shame, full of cancel culture, full of people defending their own opinion and canceling others because they don't have the same viewpoints. And it's become okay to publicly shame people. Now, here's where I feel like this conversation isn't being had and really needs to be. People are constantly talking about wanting peace and wanting everybody to get along and wanting this kind of utopian society and world. And yet we're fueling these inner wars with people every time they have a differing opinion. So this episode is going to be your invitation back into the nuance, back into the gray, back into respecting each other's opinions and understanding when you yourself are triggered. Now, I know that there are going to be so many of you listening who are going to say, oh yeah, no, I don't do that. I don't need to listen to this episode. But trust me, babes, you really do. It is so nuanced, and it is actually something that is happening in the spiritual space. It's happening in the business space. It's happening within obviously relationships and friendships and family relationships as well, not just romantic. And I think that it's really important that we listen to this conversation. Now, even if you in your heart of hearts are fully congruent with the fact that this is not you that I'm talking to, it's still a really important conversation to have. And maybe by listening to this episode, you might be able to approach someone else, because as I've said many times before, we need to reflect back to others the things that they may not be able to see about themselves. So let's come in together. Let's come back to the place where truth lives, where healing lives, where connection lives, and let's marinate in this space together. Black and white thinking is keeping so many people emotionally stunted, spiritually stuck, and relationally disconnected. I want to dive under and look at what it actually looks like to reclaim your inner authority and emotional maturity in a world that is addicted to outrage. Now, it is no secret that today's world and culture and society is deeply polarized. But I do think that there is something so much deeper underneath just the politics and religion and cultural differences and opinions and online shaming, far, far deeper. And that is the mass inability to regulate discomfort. So many people today were not taught how to be with their own emotions. They weren't taught how to sit with discomfort, how to sit with tension, how to move through conflict without just cutting people off, or how to hold a conversation without losing their sense of self in the face of disagreement. And when someone hasn't done that work, every difference becomes dangerous. Every boundary feels like a rejection. Every conversation is like a minefield or a battlefield. And this starts young. We have raised generations of people being told, you're amazing, you're so special, you're unique and different and rare. And that's from the moment that we could speak and we had a voice. Now, I'm not saying that our children shouldn't be affirmed and we shouldn't praise our kids. I don't think we should overpraise them. That's not the point here. The point is we didn't get the counter side. We didn't get the side that says, here's emotional resilience, here's accountability, here's responsibility, here's feedback. Here's how to understand that you're not the center of everybody's story and everybody's world. So now what happens is they step out into the real world and they've got this inflated sense of ego and sense of self that they're so amazing and so special and so unique. And then they realize that the real world actually doesn't really care, which is very polarizing when you're expecting to be coddled by it and expecting everybody else to see your brilliance because that's what you've constantly been reaffirmed. So then you've got this internal discord creating havoc, and that's not just internal, that's also relationally and socially. The real issue isn't just opinions, it's that we weren't taught how to hold ourselves in them and through them. Now, here is something that most of you are not going to want to hear. Your trigger is not someone else's responsibility. But here is something else that is just as important and something that I don't think many people are talking about. Being triggered by someone doesn't make it their fault, but triggering someone does not mean that you are free from accountability either. I think this one is the one that's going to get a lot of people and might sting a little for some people because a lot of times people go, oh, no. And trust me, this was me. I get it. There is a part of the journey where you understand the reclamation of, oh, these are my emotions, therefore I have to deal with them. And when you start doing that work and you see others aren't, you start to go, hold on a minute, that's your stuff. You need to deal with that. That's not for me to deal with. And I get it. Trust me, I get it. But that doesn't mean that you're not still accountable for triggering someone else, whether you intended it or not. So let's unpack this properly. Triggers are your emotional fire alarms. Now, fire alarms don't always just go off when there is a literal fire, right? If you cook something in the kitchen and you accidentally burn something, you've got some smoke, or you've got a candle burning or some incense, they can go off. So your fire alarm for your triggers are not necessarily going off because there is a fire that has been set, but because there is still unprocessed pain in the system. When you feel triggered, that is your invitation to turn inward, to inquire, to sit within it, to really understand where it's coming from and not just logically move through that, but to physically understand that, to thank it for why it's still there and to release it. But here is the part that a lot of people struggle with and they misuse. You cannot take the idea that someone's triggers are their own responsibility and then weaponize it. When someone comes to you with vulnerability and says, hey, that really hurt me, you are not in a position to say, that's your stuff to deal with. When you say to somebody, no, that's your trigger, not mine, that is not emotional maturity. That is avoidance. That is spiritual bypassing. And that is its own form of manipulation and emotional control. Now, I know that a lot of you are probably sitting there and going, oh, I feel so triggered right now. And that's okay. I'm here to say that that is my intention with this episode. That is my intention, is to really bring forward this understanding that you cannot just push something back onto somebody else in the name of spiritual development and personal development and boundaries, right? Think about it if the roles were reversed. How would you feel if you went to somebody else and said, hey, what you said really hurt me? And they just went, well, that's not my problem. You need to deal with that, not me. Sorry. It is not a nice feeling to have somebody basically say, don't care, talk to the hand. Because that's essentially what it is. It's the modern day equivalent of talk to the hand. Because the truth and the reality of the situation is that even if you did not intend to harm that person or to cause them distress, I'm not talking about when people intentionally trigger you. We're talking about unintentional harm caused by triggering somebody. Or even if that other person's filtering everything through their own lens and their own trauma, you are still responsible for how you respond to their pain. Now, this is not me saying that you need to carry the weight of what it is that they're feeling and the weight of their hurt, but you do need to own your own impact. So, how we can deal with this in an emotionally mature way, what you could say would be something like, I am so sorry that that landed that way. That was not my intention at all. And I can see that this has activated something very painful for you. And I am here to hold you with love and care. That's it. That's maturity. That's love. That's leadership. That's human connection. And you're not saying, I'm a bad person. You're saying, I care about you. You're not owning and taking on their wounds, but you're also not dismissing their experience. And after that, after you have sat with them and witnessed them and held them and made sure they feel really seen and heard and understood and loved, you can hand it back to them. You don't have to carry that with you. You can lovingly hold them in that space, allow them to process, and then allow them to move through that and give it back to them at the end. But it's only after you have owned your side and shown up with compassion and care that you can walk away with this clear clarity and lightness. You cannot skip that step and call it a boundary or say that you're protecting your peace, because that's not peace. It's just avoidance. And if that feels hard for you to hear, I understand. That was my intention, not out of malice, but out of reflecting this back to you so that you can make more emotionally mature choices and that you can repair your relationships. And please don't think that you're alone, because so many people are taught that standing up for yourself means cutting people off and cutting off anything that feels hard in the name of boundaries. But that doesn't actually create emotional safety, because emotional safety doesn't mean that you're never going to be triggered. It means that you know when you are and you have the tools to be able to handle it in that moment. So I am sure that you have heard the old adage of when you point the finger at someone else, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. And this is about taking radical responsibility. So whenever you are triggered, I want you to think about the fact that there are still 3 fingers pointing back at yourself, to remind yourself to take that radical responsibility. Now, please don't take this out of context. This is not me saying that you need to blame yourself for everything. This is about taking responsibility in a way where you can recognize the mirrors in every single moment and pausing before you project onto someone else and staying curious and asking, what is this moment teaching me? Now, let me actually say this really, really clearly. This is not for those of you who have been in emotionally unsafe and abusive situations and relationships. That is not the person that I'm talking to here, because there are absolutely healthy times when cutting people off is the most aligned decision that you can make and the healthiest decision that you can make. This is about the importance of distinguishing when something is a sacred boundary rooted in honor and respect for yourself versus a reactive cutoff that is based in emotional avoidance. So for those of you who have been in those situations of abuse, I'm so sorry. And this is definitely not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that not every emotional situation is unsafe like those are. And not every disagreement should be a red flag. And not every trigger is a trauma. So of course, absolutely, there are moments when walking away is 100% the right choice. This is about knowing the difference between protecting ourselves and avoiding the change and growth that comes from staying in the room when you are feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So let's ground this with a few real world examples. A friend might say something to you that stings a little bit and they might be reflecting something back at you, but instead of reflecting on that point, you decide that they've betrayed you and you cut them off and you block them because they've been a bad friend. Or your partner might give you some feedback and instead of receiving it with presence, you shut down and you make them into a villain. Or perhaps somebody shares a different view online and instead of staying open and really hearing what it is that that person has to say and thinking about it like we used to have to do when we had face-to-face conversations and we didn't have social media, now you can just scroll past it, you can unfollow them, you can block them, and you can essentially just call them problematic or call them an idiot without actually having to have any consequences. And this is something that is really big because our algorithms are constantly feeding us this barrage of all of the things that we want to see. Whatever it is that you're consuming is constantly feeding that algorithm so that they can continue to show you things that are according to your biases. Which means that when we see something polarizing come up, it becomes very triggering for a lot of people because they go, this is not what I want my social media to be. This is not what I want to see. How dare they? And they become so outraged that they then react. They're blocking or reporting accounts. However, if all that you have in your space is reaffirming your current belief system, and you're not staying open to additional information, to additional change, and to additional opinions and ideas, then what you're doing is blocking yourself off from growth and understanding and truth. Because just because you don't want to see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. These are the micro moments where we have the opportunity to choose truth or to choose trigger. And that is up to you to choose, which coincidentally is the perfect segue into pivot points. So here's your moment of truth. You get to choose. Option 1, you stay in the pattern. You outsource your emotional safety to everybody else. You make everybody tiptoe around you. You avoid conflict. You cut people off. You refuse to acknowledge that there are other opinions and other people living lives that are just as rich and vibrant and important as yours. And you interpret every disagreement as danger. Or option number 2, you become a grounded, radically responsible, emotionally mature adult. You learn to sit with discomfort and you take responsibility for your triggers and your impact. You communicate with clarity and compassion, and you build connection through honesty and respect, not control. So my favorite question, have you had enough yet of this, of confusing boundaries with disconnection and personal power with emotional avoidance? This is what I'd be choosing. The choice is ultimately yours to make. And that's what I'm here for, to show you the options, to show you what possibilities you have. Now, let's utilize an embodiment tool to really solidify what it is that we have learned today and to move through those triggers a little bit so that we can regulate ourselves and so that we can hold space for those who we may have triggered unintentionally, but that is still our responsibility to own. Okay, so this is a trigger reframing practice, and this is really helpful and healthy for anyone who is in a situation where they've been triggered, or perhaps you've triggered somebody else and you want to hold space for them so that they can move through that. All it takes is 4 steps, which I'm going to run you through. And as long as you can remember those 4 steps, as soon as you feel triggered in the moment and you're not sure how to handle the situation, instead of blowing up and instead of immediately projecting onto others, I want you to take a second and I want you to do these 4 things. So when you feel activated, whether that is because of something somebody said, whether that is because of a look that somebody gave you, maybe it's a post online or somebody's tone when they're talking to you, perhaps somebody cuts you off in traffic and all of a sudden you have these feelings bubbling up inside you that may even feel like they are a complete overreaction for the current situation. I want you to, first step, pause. I want you to stop. I don't want you to react. I want you to breathe into your body and take a second. This is one of the hardest steps because catching yourself before reacting, when that is your default setting, is something that can be really tricky. But the more you do it, it's like a muscle. The more you flex it, it's going to grow and you're going to become more and more comfortable with it and it's going to become easier. Okay. Second step, name it. I am feeling, insert emotion here. I am feeling pissed off. I am feeling frustrated as heck. I am feeling infuriated by whatever it is that that person just said, whatever it is that you're feeling. Now, this is not, I am feeling triggered because this person did this, right? We're naming an emotion here. We are not casting blame. We are not projecting onto the other person. This is about you and what it is that you're feeling. So you want to really connect what it is that you're thinking to what you're feeling. And you want to really allow your brain and your body to come into sync, because oftentimes we'll have an overreaction and people will go, wow, that was so intense. And even you yourself will go, why did I react so big to that particular thing? I'm not entirely sure why I had such a big reaction. And it's often because there's something living in the body that we're unaware of, and that gets triggered. And all of a sudden, it's not about the fact that they left the toilet seat up. It's not about the fact that you stubbed your toe. It's not about the fact that they gave you a funny look. It's about whatever it brings up within you from your past experiences or from the stories that you tell yourself, right? So we're going to name it. I am feeling this feeling and something about this is activating me. Yeah, that's number 2. Number 3 is investigate. This is where we ask ourselves the question to understand where it's coming from. So we ask, where have I felt this before? Or what am I making this mean when it may not actually be what it is about, right? So like I was saying before, it's not about the toilet seat. And I actually don't know why I'm using that as an example because we don't have that problem in this household, but I know it is a common one. So it's not about the toilet seat, right? It's about what it represents to you. Is that representing disrespect because you have asked over and over and over again and you're not getting the result that you desire, and it makes you feel like you are not being respected because you have asked so many times and there hasn't been a change in behavior, perhaps, right? And then one of the key questions you really need to ask yourself is this about the present moment, or is this just an old story resurfacing? Because usually that's the key. It's often an old story that is sitting and living within our body. Okay, so that's number 3, investigate. And then number 4 is to choose your response. So this is all just about taking a moment to really understand what is happening and then choosing your response, deciding our action, our inaction, or our reaction. Yeah. So number 4, choosing how to act. And this is where you really want to respond from clarity, not from that trigger and trauma response, not from your first flash of emotion that pops up. This is about just having that mindfulness and taking a second to breathe and really understand what it is that's happening, what's underneath it, and then making sure that that next reaction or that next thing that comes out of your mouth is something that is more aligned and you are choosing that response. So maybe that might look like you taking some space. Maybe you decide that no response is even needed at all. Or maybe you ask them a question and you get some clarification. But this is designed for you to take back your power and to acknowledge, okay, something is happening. But instead of just allowing that to run the show, this is giving you back that mindfulness piece and allowing you to take a moment so that you can stand in your truth, in your power, and really make sure that what it is that comes out of your mouth is not going to be something that you regret, is not going to be something that's going to hurt somebody else, and is going to be something that is within the proportions of the conversation or experience. Let this practice remind you that you are not fragile, that you are capable of holding discomfort without collapsing or projecting, because we are not here to attempt healing. We are here to live it. Today's whisper from within: where in your life are you expecting others to manage your discomfort instead of sitting with it, instead of healing it, and instead of choosing differently? If this episode stirred something within you, if you are ready to stop outsourcing your power, to start speaking your truth, and to step into grounded, emotional, mature leadership and responsibility, then the work that I do with my clients is guiding them through this, and I would love to work with you. Whether it is healing the emotional triggers that keep you reactive or finding the clarity to live your life from a place of truth and not trauma, I am here to walk with you. You do not have to do it alone. Whether it is working with me one-on-one in a coaching capacity, or perhaps it is doing one of my courses, or maybe it is joining me in radical responsibility in online business, learning to create income and impact, freedom and legacy online to become the very best and highest version of yourself. Come over and find me on Instagram at Lyssn Podcast. That's LYSSN Podcast. Or you can find me directly at Lyssn Natalie. Let's talk about your next aligned step so that you can stop shrinking around your pain and start listening to your inner truth and inner power. Thank you for listening. Thank you for leaning in. Thank you for staying curious. Thank you for choosing the gray in a world that wants you to be black and white and keeps begging you to pick a side. Until next time, keep softening into your truth, keep standing in your clarity, and above all, keep listening. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening, beautiful soul. If you felt something shift, please reflect on it, share it, and let it ripple out into the world. If something spoke to your heart space today, I would love if you could share it with someone that you love and leave us a review, which will really help more of our soul fam to find their way here. If you want to connect with me, if you have questions, topics, if you want to know more about my courses, or if you even just want to say hi, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Come find me over on Instagram at Lyssn Podcast. That's LYSSN Podcast. Or you can message me directly at LyssNatalie. My DMs are always open. Until next time, stay soft, stay true, keep living your bliss, and remember, your soul's song is always worth remembering. So, keep listening.